All right, guys, so a quick update here as this search is really heating up for Stanford as David Shaw ended up, resigning and leaving the program after David Shaw really went on a run, really following Jim Harbaugh. But David Shaw built that thing and sustained with Andrew Luck. I believe that they might have won Pac-12 championships. So David Shaw was a really solid coach. But then at Stanford, it had just gotten dry. It had gotten stale. And let me tell you guys, the NIL game and the way that college football is going with the transfer portal and NIL, where college guys can make money off of their play, off of their social media, which I think is a positive for the young athlete. Syracuse football, Stanford. I was just talking about Syracuse earlier. Stanford is an academic institution. It's really hard to get into Stanford University. It's a private school in California. It's one of the best schools in the country. I'd say maybe the best. You look at Harvard, you look at Stanford. Okay, so the academic standards there for athletes, for football players, are really, really challenging. San Francisco's decent. The Valley's decent with talent. California, or you're talking about LA, Seattle, but with the academic standards, it's so tough. And then also with NIL, they're not really a player there with NIL. A lot of the funding's going to academics. So it's one of the hardest jobs in the country. And then you're replacing a tremendous coach, one of the most well-liked people in college football, in David Shaw, that took Stanford to a level that is really, I don't think, attainable to achieve again. Jim Harbaugh and David Shaw were tremendous, and David Shaw just needed a reset, and I understood it. I understood it. Then with their offense, they tried to then run with scheme, which is what David Shaw would do. They're a very physical football team, but then with Tanner McKee, they try to run that extended run pass option, RPO, where the guy would be almost extending it to the line of scrimmage. So they really didn't have talent, and it's so hard to acquire talent. So this is a tough job to sell in some ways. In other ways, it's not. Your family moves to Stanford. You might be paid pretty decently. Palo Alto's a beautiful town, one of the cleanest cities in America, and the college is absolutely outstanding, Stanford University. So it should be a first-class experience for whoever decides to take the job. Now, it's in the Pac-12. What do we know about the future of that conference? What's going to happen there? But recruiting is so darn tough. As a football coach, who wants to win, that's not a place that would be in my destinations or even towards the top. It would actually be towards the bottom because you're coming after Harbaugh and Shaw, and then you got NIL in the transfer portal, so academics are hard anyway, and when a kid is not going to be playing on Stanford, he's going to transfer. So it is just really tough because in the days before the transfer portal and NIL, it was a developmental program, which it still is. So you get high school guys, you get physical, tough football players, and then you build it up over time. So then you get 3-year guys, 4-year guys, and then before the transfer portal, the big programs, they would dip as well because kids would graduate, and then you'd be able to catch them with your line play and with your physicality. So now you look at the guys that they're considering. Sacramento State's coach is a really successful coach, has had that program humming for a while, but really the headliner is Jason Garrett. And Jason Garrett was with the Dallas Cowboys, had a couple of really successful seasons there, never was terrible. Jason Garrett, one of the nicest people in the world, but with the New York Giants then and Joe Judge, how innovative was his offense? It wasn't innovative with Daniel Jones, really, but Jason Garrett runs a pro-style system, and you can argue that Daniel Jones and the talent that they had, that Gettleman and Judge surrounded him with, wasn't necessarily favorable to produce big results. So for Stanford University, I just described how hard the job is. For them to be luring in either a Sacramento State coach or either Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett's a good hire if you're the Stanford athletic director. Jason Garrett, went to Princeton. He's an Ivy League guy, so you can make those connections there. And you're getting an NFL coach that knows the National Football League, that is very well liked and respected by peers, and really should be, knock on wood, a really good face for your organization. So that is the news in the Pac-12. Of course, we have a lot of Pac-12 people on the channel, Colorado, Oregon, Arizona State people here. Stanford has been a player in the Pac-12, and now Jason Garrett is a finalist, going from NBC broadcasting to now maybe getting into college football. This guy led America's team. He led the most popular NFL team for a long time, Jason Garrett. And now Jason Garrett is considered for Stanford. I think for Stanford and Garrett, this would be a pretty solid hire, because you got to think, guys, with NIL, the recruiting, and all of the challenges now of getting into Stanford, what people are going to be interested in this job. So Jason Garrett would be a pretty solid get for Stanford.